welcome to the 6th installment of the live stream series that we've got going on, presented by Pop Drone. It's really nice to say that. Really great friends up in Ottawa. And today I am totally ecstatic to have my really good friend, Euntaek Kim. Me and this guy, we go way back. How are you doing, Euntaek? It's good to have you.
Doing pretty well. Thanks for having me up here.
Yep.
Very excited to be here and talk about some music and play some music.
Yeah. So Euntaek and I, we were actually classmates at Juilliard. By the time we met, Euntaek was pretty much already the musician that I admire so much. But I'm hoping that maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that journey started, like where you're from originally. How did you get into music, and how did your journey begin? And just tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so
Mic on, by the way. Oh, wonderful, awesome.
okay, great. So yeah, I started music roughly around 3.5 years old. I started very young. Didn't really know what I was doing. It's one of those things where your parents encourage you to try it out, sort of thing. And I really liked it, and I stayed around with it. And I was in Korea for a while until about the age of 12, 13. I was at a pre-college of the Korean National University of Arts, which is modeled after the Juilliard School. And then I came to the United States, and then I did Juilliard Prep, and then college, which is where I met you.
Yeah, wonderful. Now I seem to remember you told me your first teacher, or the teacher that you had there, made some sort of special impression on you. I don't remember. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
Who was that, and what was that impression?
So there was a lady by the name of Boki Chang in Korea.
Wonderful.
She was the first teacher that I was assigned to at the pre-college of KNWA, Korea National University of Arts. And yeah, when I first met her, because the way I was brought up was very casual with regards to musical education, she thought, oh, there's quite a bit of work that you need to do in terms of technique, and she made me do a lot of very rigorous exercises and exposed to many repertoire, but also taught me the importance of discipline. So.
Yeah. It's always interesting the effect that a first teacher can have on a musician's development. I mean, I think it's really in many ways it's really sort of a crossroads, or really a fork in the road for a developing musician. So my first teachers were my parents. So I sort of learned everything that I knew from watching them and seeing what they were doing. So it's interesting to hear that she saw something in you, and a lot of times now that we're teachers, I feel that we're hardest on the students that we actually see have the most potential. So that's wonderful that she saw that in you.
Yeah, I think it's in general with regards to any kind of education, it's important that you set a very clear example as early as possible, and you're very fortunate to have your parents to do that from early on. My parents were not musicians. My mother's family was artistic.
Okay.
I have a few painters on my mother's side, and in fact, I do have a violist cousin who's playing at the Seoul National University, Seoul National Symphony Orchestra.
Oh wow!
And yeah, but that's about it with music in my family. And I grew up not really knowing what kind of life a musician should lead, and I was very lucky to meet this lady who taught me exactly that.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And so you came to the States, came to America, and that you ended up in New Jersey, right? Or
correct.
Yeah, wonderful. And so you said you were in Juilliard, right, at pre-college? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was that? How was that transition, and what did you do when you were there?
I stayed at the Juilliard Prep for about 2 years. I came to the United States in 2001, and then the next year I got into the pre-college, and then I auditioned for college in 2004. I would say that my impression of pre-college was probably not too long, but I did meet a lot of people who became very special, and people who ended up being kind of lifelong companions and colleagues.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah. And so at that time, had you already formulated in your mind that music is going to be my life, or were you still sort of deciding between multiple paths at that point in your
With
life?
me, I think being a musician was the single goal I had from even before.
Yeah.
Because my parents were not musicians, they were hesitant in letting me walk the path.
Yeah.
They knew, my mother, having been artistic, knew that it was a difficult path ahead of me.
Yeah.
So but I persisted nonetheless.
Yeah, of course.
I'd say as early as 5 or 6 years old, I thought, music is the thing. I used to listen to music all the time. My father had a wonderful sound system back in those days. And
Oh, nice.
I learned to use CDs as early as my memory can go. So I just listened to it all day.
Yeah.
So I think music was definitely, it sounds corny, but it really was really part of my DNA.
Yeah. No, it's funny because, when I was that age, I still was not sure, whether or not I was going to be, a professional musician or pursue it but I knew that it was something that was always going to be a part of me. I knew that it was something that I was extremely passionate about, but it's not something that I really considered, this is going to be my life. But it's interesting. I think that feeling that you mentioned was also in me as well. Like, can you articulate like what it was about music that made you feel like this is what I'm going to be, if you can, and because sometimes it might be a particular piece that you heard or a particular performance or something that inspired you, or was it just something more general?
I think it's something that you're born with. I think there's a proclivity in somebody. You either have it or you don't. I think this is not to say that people should give up on music quickly. On the contrary, I think everybody should be exposed to the great beauty that's out there. But I think some others are more prone to being open and being more attuned to how he or she feels about music or art or anything that is not so tangible.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on how much of creativity you have in you.
Yeah.
And so, when you get the calling, you have to listen to it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And so pre-college finishes, you're at Juilliard now, you're a college student. That's actually where we met. That's where our paths finally intersect. So what was going on for you musically at that time? Like, because I sort of feel, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, by the time I met you, I sort of feel that you were already fully formed into like sort of the Euntaek that I know right now. Did you feel that way, or did you feel that you were still on a journey to, get to some sort of Parnassus of some sort? Or how do you feel about that?
Well, perhaps, I never feel that I have gotten to a certain point. It's when you have acquired knowledge, you have more questions than when you began, right? If you answer one question, that question is, or that answer is connected to 3 other questions related to it. So in fact, you end up not knowing. In fact, you end up knowing less.
Yeah.
And so it almost feels like as if the bar that you're raising is running away from you quickly, kind of like expansion of the universe, and you are the light that is trying to chase after it. And when I met you, that must have been my 3rd year.
I think so, yeah.
I was very lost at the time, artistically speaking, because the reason was because I had a very determined pursuit of my musical career. Coming from small city in Korea to go all the way far to Juilliard School, there was like such a goal. It was a dream. It was a drive. Yeah. And I got there, and I almost had an existential crisis as to not necessarily what am I doing here, but in terms of what is it that now I need to accomplish artistically.
Yeah, like I think I know the feeling you mean.
What is beauty? You're trying to really understand, and not just what people tell you, but you're trying to take for yourself. You're trying to perceive beauty in the way that you can understand, and not the way you're told. And
that's a powerful statement. For sure.
I felt that the 3rd year was still very much in the dark. I felt a little bit more assured in my 4th year. And I have to tell you, the reason why I felt that was because I suffered hand injury. I suffered tendonitis during that time from playing too much, and it was also exacerbated by the fact that I had certain technical things I had to correct that I wasn't aware of. And that sort of put me in a place where I couldn't practice for more than an hour without feeling excruciating pain. And that's when I really felt scared, and I was trying to figure myself out even more. And somehow I learned, what I learned in the fourth year was that the more you're trying to make music fit into a conformity,
Yes.
the music suffocated, and as a result, it manifested in your body. So I learned the fine art of controlling to a certain degree that you're trying to impose is the wrong word, but you're trying to attempt to show the world how you see this music from your lens. But also the music will exist nonetheless. You know, your contribution is in a way irrelevant. The music has its own rhetoric. So you gotta let that live. And that involves letting go of control or letting go of desire to micromanage. And I learned that. But the way I learned that it was by facing a crisis. And
You know, you actually, well, two things. The first thing is I'm kind of curious, what were those physical things that you feel that you had to correct? That's number one. And number two, which is something we can elaborate on, I've always held the opinion that you play the piano with your body, and the body is controlled by the mind and the spirit. And so one thing that you said that really sort of struck me was that the more that you try to sort of force things to be something that's infinite like music, the more you try to put it into a box, that sort of discomfort can begin to get into your psyche and then manifest physically, which can come through when you're playing. So how do you, what were some of those things that you felt that you had to overcome? Was it something that was all mental and then it just became a physical way of playing? Or was it something that you said, no, I need to physically just change my, whatever it may be in order to get this to go away? Or was it some combination?
so I'll answer the latter question first, because I think it would be easier for me to answer the first one. It will become self-evident. So I have the kind of personality where things come from cerebral place.
Okay.
Things, I always have to process things here, and then it gets manifested. You know, some people are just physically really talented. I never saw myself as being physically talented. Often when I understood a concept, though, then my body sort of figured it out. I always felt that way. So it's really actually very fascinating for me to hear what you said about how body is then influencing. I could learn a great deal from you in terms of well, a lot of things. But so when I had this revelation at the time, I realized that I was holding tension in my shoulders and my neck, which was probably, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know exactly, but was probably doing something to my wrist, which was then causing my wrist to inflate.
Yeah.
And so, and that's clearly, your mind wanting for a specific desire, which is not met by the body because that's not natural. It's not something that your body wants to do, or it's not something that piano wants to be harassed by.
Yes.
You gotta, it's also that, you gotta dance with the piano a little bit.
Absolutely.
And when you don't let that happen and you try to make the piano do what you want to do,
it's like, no.
It doesn't, it's gonna fight back.
Yeah.
It's gonna fight back. So that's what happened. And I learned, okay, I need to be more of an observer in the scenario and see what I can do to help the elements around me come forth.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, this is piano technique gold right here, which is, a lot of times, I feel like musicians forget that as pianists, we're not playing our own instruments. If you could imagine being backstage at a recital or chamber concert or something like that, and you just take the violinist's violin and give them another one and say, all right, good luck. Like, yeah, that's basically what we do every time. And so part of being able to do that involves a bit of letting go. Like you said, like you have to get into this sort of dance with the piano, which is that, okay, this piano doesn't want to be danced with like that. I have to see what it wants. I have to see what it will allow, and I totally agree. It involves a degree of physical acceptance and relaxation. And it's funny enough. I think that I struggled with that too. I mean, maybe it's something that all of us just have to go through at some point. Being in a conservatory environment, like you said, you're being told to understand and process things in a certain way. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I do feel that it can lead to a little bit of overcompensation, where it's like you become so concerned about doing things that way that, like you said, you can lose some of that freedom where I like what you said about being an observer in that process. Like there's the music, there's the piano, and it's like I'm just kind of here.
Right, and I want to specify with that word observer. It's like observer to self. So one of the things that I noticed in conservatory environment was, and then this is completely personal anecdote, is that quite often you have such formidable colleagues around you. So you're almost telling yourself what's to be done. No matter how you slice it, you can't avoid the competitive spirit of the place.
Sure.
So, so-and-so can play octaves this way.
Yes.
So I should be able to do that also.
Right.
The answer is not true.
No.
You are not that person.
Yes.
You're not that person. You're not born with the same genetics.
Yes.
You're not born with the same hand size, what have you.
Yes.
So you need to be listening to what you are,
yes,
rather than what other people are there for you to catch up.
Yes.
And I think that's where the great mistake happens quite often.
Yeah,
So.
I agree wholeheartedly. Because, like you said, you're immersed in that environment, and it's really easy to look at things like in sort of a materialistic way. Like this person's doing that, so I should do it. And it's like you said, you're not that person. Like our bodies are different, and it's like we play piano with our bodies. So I think one of the things that I had to understand is that mastering the piano is not really a thing. You have to master yourself. The piano it's inanimate, like it's just a machine of wood and steel, and we have to interface our bodies with that somehow.
You're like I said, my personality always comes from the brain. I feel always it comes out that way.
Yes.
So for me, it's always a blank paper that I'm pouring out to, rather than for the lack of expression. You're trying to assign yourself to be, oh, I'm a pianist.
Yes.
It's not clear to me what I am. I mean, I also conduct.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I, for a while, used to compose quite a bit. And, you always need a piano for that. You
Yes.
always need the piano to not only study orchestra scores and to write music. For me, at least, I need the piano to write music. And quite often, the piano isn't going to provide, for instance, if you're writing a symphony, it's not going to provide the colors that you need out of a symphony,
Yeah.
right? But you imagine it.
That's
And in
right.
doing so, when you play the piano, it comes out manifested in imaginary form. And so it's always, if you look at the piano for piano's sake, you're going to find shortcomings. And
Yeah. No, I agree. So one thing, I think the last time we actually hung out, we were talking about fasting. Like, are you still doing that? Or are you
Yeah,
yeah.
I am.
No, that's great. It's funny because I do it too. And then when the two of us started hanging out and we were like, oh, we're both fasting. I feel like that's actually one of those things that helps me to play better.
in what way, man?
Well, I think the thing is, like I said, playing the piano is, at least in my estimation, and it kind of seems like this might be what you're talking about too. It's really about control of the self first, and I think what happened to me in my development is that I become so obsessed with controlling the piano, and the piano is like, I don't really want to be controlled. Like, first of all the pianos are different. We're cut from different trees. We're in different rooms. So it's like, why don't I focus more on controlling myself? And I feel like fasting is one of the simplest ways of exercising self-control,
Right.
beginning to learn self-control, where it's like, hey, my body is telling me these messages or sending me these messages of hunger, but it's like they're not real. Like it's not
Right.
like it's just saying things
Right.
because it's used to eating. Like it's been fed at a certain time every day, multiple times a day for 25, 30 years, however long you've been alive, and it's just by habit demanding food that it doesn't really need. And so, like, by learning to control that, I felt it taught me a lot of lessons about pianism. What do
Yeah,
you think?
I mean, I can totally follow up with that. I
Yeah.
would say that one of the things that really convinced me to start intermittent fasting in life was the fact that when I'm not eating as much, I am generally more tired. It's cause and effect. So I am less likely to have energy to force things. And
Yes.
you
Yes.
learn to be on the back seat of things. And and at the same time, as you're going through the cycle of your hormones or whatever as you're fasting, you're listening to your body. You're learning to see how it feels to do something, right? And nothing feels more acute than hunger.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
it's very interesting to go through the process, and then you learn, okay, that's what it feels like to let go of my control, the desire to satiate
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. It's funny because I started fasting for reasons that had nothing to do with music. Like I was just doing it for general physical fitness and things like that. But then I began to notice the mental and physical benefits that it had on my piano playing, and it's exactly what you said. Like it's forcing me to listen to my body in a
And
way
it's
that I hadn't.
meditative. And
Yeah.
it's meditative to fast. I mean, if you think about the fact that Buddhist monks fast for 18 hours of the day or something like that.
Sure.
And piano playing is very meditative as a result, because you're observing how the music is sounding and you're responding to it. It's very hard for me to think that pianists are creating the music. I mean, it's certainly not true unless you have written the piece yourself. You're not creating, you're recreating, you're rehashing, you're letting the piece have its rebirth.
Yeah.
So you're just a medium.
That's right. And one of the things that was always interesting about the way that I was brought up musically is that I was always under the impression that pianists are, like you said, we're recreating something. And so I was taught that classical music is a way of recreating something that it's just instructions that you follow off a page, and then you render this into existence. And then I was taught that composition or improvisation, which is just spontaneous composition, is basically the other end of that spectrum or discipline, where it's like now I'm actually becoming part of this conduit now, where like the music is coming from me. So it's really refreshing to hear you say that, because I agree. So tell me a little bit about the music that you've recorded, because you're going to play at least one of the things that's on your new album. You've done an album of Russian piano sonatas, Rachmaninoff First Piano Sonata, which is a titanic piece. A piece that that even since college, like I remember we listened to it and looked and we were like, what is this? Yeah. And the Prokofiev Second Sonata, and then is it Scriabin 8?
Scriabin 8.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So tell me about that project and how it came into existence and all that.
Well, the pieces were chosen simply because I really love those pieces. I mean, really simple reason is that, first of all, the Rachmaninoff First Sonata I developed a deep love for because you started playing them when you arrived, and I was like, what is this insane piece that this dude is playing? I want to know more about it. And it was mysterious, and it was ambiguous, and it was just really colorful, and I just thought, I want to learn that. And every time I looked at it, I was like, how am I going to ever learn that? So I finally mustered up the courage to do so. And then those three pieces happened to be written within the same decade, which made me think...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which made me think, that's really fascinating, Three different people living in similar times.
Yeah.
And it was a turbulent time, between 1905 and 1915. It was a very strange time, especially in Russia. Things were very unstable. And I just wanted to, and this was also the time when existentialism was really taking hold.
Yes.
And possibly nihilism was starting to really make its stance a little bit more. And I just wanted to see how are these three composers dealing with the existential pang, you might say, for the lack of better expression, of life.
Yeah.
Rachmaninoff, of course, being deeply Christian, Orthodox Christian, you can hear many elements such as the Russian bell ringing, chant, Dies Irae, and then you can see Scriabin just taking off in his own whole new world where he's now the Messiah, and he's going to figure out how to end the world and start a new universe because he's written a piece of music that has such intricate and amazing counterpoint and harmony that it's going to actually break the atoms apart in the universe.
Yes, yes.
Which is
he was convinced
bold,
of this.
it's a bold claim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, you know, now that you mention it, and I'm sort of piecing the timeline together in my head. It's like, yeah, those things were closer together than you think, because with Scriabin, I always forget how rapidly he went from the first sonata, right?
It's ridiculous how quickly it went. I mean,
Yeah.
you could also argue that maybe there was an underlying mental problem that was going with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think he was such a neurotic and an excitable person that I think
Yes.
it only exacerbated his creativity.
Yeah, yeah, because Rachmaninoff is one of those, you know, you can look at different composers, you know, you can look at, you know, sort of early period, middle period, late periods of their lives, depending on how long they lived. And some people change drastically, and some people don't really change much at all. Rachmaninoff did change, of course, he did change. There's a huge change between the you know, the first sonata Rachmaninoff and then, you know, symphonic dances. You know, there's exactly, yeah. See, it's two different men, but still you can tell, you know, it's the same, you know. Whereas if you listen to the first piano sonata of Scriabin and then the 8th or the 9th, it's like
different people.
Right, if you didn't know, it's like these are two different, like, what happened?
Yeah.
And so quickly.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That and so where did you record it, and
I recorded
how can people find it and all that?
Yeah, I recorded at Yale University, which was
Nice.
where I did my Artist Diploma program.
That's right.
And they've got a wonderful hall with a really wonderful piano, and the recording engineer is super awesome, Matt Lefebvre, and it was such fun working with him. Just weird music, you know. He was crazy music that we were recording here in the middle of a quiet hall, and it was a great blast. And you can find it. It's labeled by MSR Classics, and so at the moment you can find it on their website, and it should be available on all media, Spotify, iTunes, and
Wonderful.
Amazon soon.
And I put a link to that album in the description of the video. So if you want to listen to it, purchase it, you can just scroll down there and find it. So you're going to play the second movement of Rachmaninoff First Sonata, which is going to be on that album. So you're going to play that first, and then after that, you're playing a couple sonatas of Scarlatti. So tell us a little bit about your program, what you're going to play.
Yeah, so the Scarlatti sonatas are, again, you know, the way I choose repertoire is almost selfish. You know, I listen to it and I go, oh, that's a nice piece. I wish I could play that, and so I play it. So,
Nice.
Actually, was very fortunate that there was a concert in Texas that I was supposed to play that asked me to play some harpsichord solo pieces, and I thought, well, why not play some Scarlatti sonatas?
Yeah.
And that's how I went about learning these pieces. And the Ginastera, the two pieces that I'll play today, is also related to that, because it's very public friendly and yet very intricate and interesting piece. You know, this was written in the very beginning of Ginastera's life. You know, he's a young composer who's trying to figure things out, and it's fun to play. And so.
Wonderful. All right. Well, let's hear it. I'm going to get the camera angle set up. You get a nice zoom in, and you can play a little bit if you want to warm up it at all. And then the floor is all yours.
Great.
So thanks a lot again. This is Mr. Euntaek Kim. The album is in the description, and the program is also in the description, so you can scroll down and see that if you wish. Rachmaninoff, Scarlatti, and Ginastera. And thanks a lot, Euntaek. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was, as I was saying, I was just dancing on the other side of the wall, listening. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming and being a part of this. It was so wonderful just to see you again. First of all,
Yeah, definitely.
in the midst of this pandemic, it's always wonderful to see a friendly face.
Absolutely.
Beautiful playing again. Rachmaninoff, Scarlatti, and Ginastera. The album is available now. Russian Piano Sonatas, Rachmaninoff Piano Sonata number 1. Prokofiev Sonata number 2, and Scriabin Sonata number 8. The link is in the description. Also, if you like what you heard, please feel free to donate to Euntaek. There's a link on the screen. You can Venmo him, PayPal him. Any donations would be greatly appreciated. And thank you for supporting the live stream. What you can do to keep supporting us, comment where you're listening from. I know there's people in Chicago listening, California, Canada, got some people in Europe, New York. So just let us know where you're listening from. It helps us to know that you're out there and enjoying what we're doing. Thanks again to Pop Drone, a wonderful organization in Ottawa. My friend Gregory Clark is running and doing a great job helping us present all this stuff. And we'll see you next week. I think episode 7 is next week. And my really, really great friend, Mr. Edward Callahan, is going to stop by. I believe he's playing some music of Scriabin, actually. So we're just talking about Scriabin. So he'll be here next week, and we'll have a nice conversation and listen to some more music. So thanks again, Euntaek.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. See you guys next week.